it's why I love what I do. We got a letter in the mail from a kid who, for a school project, he was supposed to write a letter to a business. And he wrote to us, and he was talking about how he loved Pokemon and he was going to be the greatest Pokemon trainer. And he wanted to come to our store to learn how to play Pokemon and buy Pokemon cards from us. And it was just very cute. I actually wrote him back, and I mailed it. And I think the mom saw it, and she made a post on Facebook about how her son got a response to the letter he wrote, and no one else did, because I guess other kids wrote to like larger companies who don't make time for that kind of stuff. So being a small business, being able to be an active member of my community, and reach out to our constituents, or not constituents, but like our customers, that's what makes it fun for me. I like being able to see firsthand the results of our work and our passions.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into gaming, and what eventually brought you to join the game store, Round 2 Gaming.
All right. Well, my name is Miranda Suarez. I'm 29 years old. I've been a gamer my whole life. I kind of started playing video games when I was young, because I was an only child, so it was like the best way for me to pass time. It wasn't until high school, though, that I got into tabletop gaming. It kind of all started with this store in my town called Family Fun Hobbies. I went there and I learned how to play Magic the Gathering. Me and my friends kind of turned it into like our high school haunt. Then after I graduated college, I ended up working there. So it's kind of hard to tell you the origins of Round 2 Gaming without talking a little bit about Family Fun Hobbies. Family Fun Hobbies opened in 2009, and unfortunately closed down in July of this year. So my entire staff at Round 2 Gaming was originally from Family Fun Hobbies. After Family Fun Hobbies closed, we found an investor and we decided to bring the whole staff over to Round 2 Gaming, and that's actually why it's called Round 2 Gaming, because it's our Round 2.
That's really fascinating. I haven't heard of that type of transition before with other stores that I've had on the program before. So when that's the initial store, so were you a GM there also, or were you? Okay, you are.
I was the manager at Family Fun Hobbies too. Although at Family Fun Hobbies, I started off as an associate. I had never planned on working at retail management. I studied writing in college. My whole plan was to be a writer. Obviously didn't end up working out. I fell face first into retail and then climbed my way up the ladder. But part of the reason that I do it and I continue to do it is that I love games and I'm passionate about, especially tabletop gaming. I wanted to really create a place in the community that people could gather and share a common interest. That's the most important part of what I do, to me, is creating like a healthy third space. That's like the sociological concept of a third space has always been something really fascinating to me, in that we have our first space, which is our home, and we have our second space, which is our work. But millennials and Gen Z really lack a third space in our community. It's like a communal place to go without having to pay any money. There's no expectation of, needing a subscription or something like that. So, I mean, we're lacking in those options, essentially, is the point I'm trying to make. So we at Round 2 Gaming, all of our casual events are totally free. We do have tournaments with entry fees, but that's only to pay for the prize support. So we do different events every night of the week at Round 2 Gaming. We do Magic the Gathering, we do Pokemon, we have a board game night, we do miniature wargaming, Dungeons and Dragons, and all of that is free. So we really encourage people to come to our store and meet new people, make friends, and do stuff that they love.
And you mentioned tabletop gaming was your favorite. Was that right?
Yes.
Which particular game is your favorite in that genre to play?
Probably right now, Dungeons and Dragons. I used to be really into Magic the Gathering. I stepped out of it for a while because it was taking over way too much of my time and my money. But Innistrad Remastered is coming out soon, and I know that that's going to suck me back in because I am weak for vampires. So Innistrad is like right up my alley.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that set too. Is there a particular card you're hoping to see again, or anything that's been, spoiled thus far, like previewed early wise, that you're looking forward to seeing?
Edgar Markov reprint.
Yeah, no, it's Innistrad is always the set. I wish I had stepped away from the game, but I wish I was around during original Innistrad. I was back,
Mhm.
during early Mirrodin and Kamigawa. But I was gone from the game during Innistrad. But yeah, it seems like there's a lot of hype surrounding Innistrad Remastered. Is there
Yeah.
a lot of hype around it from now the game store aspect as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as all of the things that we do at Round Two Gaming, I think Pokemon really seems to be king. For the longest time, especially back when I was working at Family Fun Hobbies, Magic the Gathering was like the number one TCG statistically, and also in our store. I think it was in 2020, like around COVID, Pokemon actually overtook Magic as the number one selling TCG. I don't know if it's still that way, but it definitely threw us all off because we're like, wow, I can't believe that happened. And then people lost their minds over Pokemon, especially during COVID. It was crazy.
Are you still seeing, like, with Pokemon? Because I have seen the same thing occur as well. I never thought I would get back into it myself, but I have.
Yeah.
But most of the time, what you see people doing is collecting more than playing. What do you see it like
Mhm.
at the store you run?
I see a little bit of both, and I think that's healthy. At its heart, Pokemon is a game, and it was intended to be for kids, but adults love it too, and that's totally fine because there's a kid in all of us. I think the thing that makes me a little bit sad, maybe, is that there's a lot of people who don't care about Pokemon at all. They don't care about the game, they don't care about the franchise. They just buy to collect because they view it as an investment. Like they're trying to, buy up. And it's not even just Pokemon. Any collectible trading card game, they're just trying to make money off of it. And I think they might be sorely disappointed in about 10 to 15 years when these prices end up tanking.
I've always wondered, that you mentioned that when you look at the original, like, base set of Pokemon, it was the unlimited version of it. It was printed so much that a lot of those cards, are very easy to acquire, and kind of,
Yeah.
back to your point of, the prices dropping. And do you think that are you still seeing that, from whether it be from your talks with distributor at the distributor level, or from what you're hearing that maybe the consumer doesn't hear? Are they still doing similar things of that nature? Where you see the prices, over 10 years potentially, decreasing, do you think are they still operating under that old philosophy of how they printed so much in the early years of the game?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the card itself, because the whole point of having card rarities is that rare cards are printed less frequently than common cards. So, every game and every set of every game has at least a handful of cards that will likely retain value for a very long time. Um, but because they're printed less often, it's, more likely that they might stay pretty stagnant in value, I would say.
And from your experience with working as the general manager of the store, and I've had other general managers on the program before, and I've noticed from the interactions I've had that GMs and owners seem to have, pretty much seem to know the store and the running of it, and the,
Mhm.
all the little nuances pretty much exactly the same. I was curious, what would your, like, responsibilities be in comparison to the owner of the store?
So I will be the first one to admit that I do not know everything about running a store. That's why I'm not the owner. I don't have any stake of ownership in the store. And I couldn't do it without my whole team because all of my employees are like a crucial role essentially that keeps our store running. So the owner of the store, Ray Wong, he is a CEO of actually a couple companies, which is really awesome. But part of the reason that he invested in us is because he has a personal interest in games and hobbies. So he's very passionate about this whole enterprise. But he's the one who does all of the numbers. Really, he's my numbers guy. He's the one who does all these crazy things with Excel spreadsheets. I'm like watching over his shoulder. I have no idea what he's doing. um, I do a lot more of the distribution and ordering side. Also inventory management. That's more where I kind of thrive and like details like that. But also a huge part of my team is my coworker Nick, who is my event coordinator. He's really the one who I play these games casually, but I'm not nearly as deep into it as Nick is. Nick plays Pokemon, he plays Magic, he plays Warhammer. When a customer has like a rules-based question, I'm like, you should talk to Nick. We also have Gil, who's our social media manager person. Like they do all of our socials and their marketing. And we also have Reese, who's our newest addition to the team, but he does a lot of the customer service.
Okay, so it's 4 of you in total, and then 5 if you include the owner?
Yes, currently, yes.
Is expanding, I guess, in terms of the employee base, something that you and the owner have talked about? Or is it like right now, like this, collection of team members is working in the current construction of things?
I mean, a little bit of both. Right now, it's working, and we're happy with the system that we have. But we're always accepting resumes just to keep on the back burner. We always encourage people who are interested in working with us. Send us your resume, because we would like to expand one day. That's the hope for any business, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And what is the owner's outside of the numbers? How involved is the owner from a day-to-day standpoint, the way in comparison to the way you are?
He comes in as often as he can. I mean, so I'm also still kind of maybe a little stuck in my ways from Family Fun Hobbies, where the owner was a little bit more hands off. So I always feel like I need to make sure that I can handle everything theoretically, but Ray is always kind of reminding me like I don't have to. I don't have to be doing that. So I do rely on him a lot, and he's there as often as he can be. And when he's there, he's incredibly present, which is awesome to see an owner be so hands-on like that. He's really friendly and personable. He's always talking to customers, introducing himself, making connections with people. It's great.
That's great to hear. Yeah, no, it's always helpful when you have that backbone to help, facilitate
Mhm.
what you're doing and have that support. So that's great to hear. What are some of the most popular games that are at the store, as we talk currently now? And are there any games, because there's been a lot of games being released lately, that you see on the horizon that could pick up in popularity for your store in particular?
I mean, so obviously the most popular right now are your key TCGs, your Pokemon, your Magic, and also Warhammer 40K is really big at our store too. But in terms of board games are hard because there's so many of them, and we're constantly getting requests to bring in new stuff. Right now, we actually just brought in Dice Throne at our store. That's not new by any means, but Dice Throne is incredibly popular. We've had a lot of people asking for it. Everyone wants to play Dice Throne. And I know that Roxley Games also just recently started up like a sort of, what's that I'm looking for? Like organized play for game stores. So that's really cool. That's part of the reason why that was like the final push to really get into it, because we would like to start doing organized play of Dice Throne at our store as well. There's not enough hours in the week to hold all the events that we want to do.
I can imagine. It is your store a big store that you're able to accommodate like multiple games running at the same time, or is it a standard size?
It's a pretty standard sized store. So we're located in the Quaker Bridge Mall.
Okay.
So our store is about 3,200 square feet, somewhere around that range. We currently have 8 tables, but we're actually looking to get more tables, especially for D&D night, because that one's really popular. We get a lot of people in for D&D night, and we're already running out of space, so we want to get more tables. It's a good thing and a bad thing, because we're kind of like, I don't know, at what point do we kind of have to start turning people away because they're like, we're breaking fire code?
That's still a good thing, though, in the sense that it
Yeah,
shows that there's the demand there.
no, absolutely.
So outside of D&D, what would you say is the next most popular of the games that you have went through there?
Probably Magic the Gathering, honestly. We actually have two nights a week that we do Magic the Gathering, and it's mainly casual Commander night. But Nick has actually been really trying to get people into other formats of Magic. We're trying to, start up Standard, Modern. Nick actually recently made a bunch of Phantom Modern decks, which is basically like a proxy deck. Unfortunately, we're going to have to redo all of them because they just banned the One Ring, and that was in like all of those decks, so now we have to redo them. But the idea was it was a way to kind of introduce people to Modern without needing to invest money into, building a Modern deck.
To touch a little bit on the recent bans and unbans, I'm curious from a store standpoint, how does that change like the behavior of buying and selling from your end? Or is it just kind of like business as usual? Or is there any, I've always wondered what the other side of it is compared to the consumer side.
So, I mean, for us, it's pretty much just business as usual. We'll still buy, the One Ring from people. It's mainly just now it's banned in, I think, what is banned in Commander, right? But like people still play casual all the time. Like, people are still gonna use it. It's not gonna stop anybody. It's. I feel like it's really more of like a on a competitive level sort of situation. Um, Either way, though, it hasn't really changed much. Honestly, most of the people I've talked to about it are happy that the One Ring got banned. They're like, finally, it's about time. That card was terrible.
Yeah, I was pretty happy about it myself. Modern has always been my favorite format, and
Yeah.
I'm actually glad with the unbans that they did too, because it kind of brings Modern
Mhm.
back to its old structure of
Yeah.
how it was back in
Yeah.
the day. So it'll be
It's
interesting
definitely
to
kind
see.
of a return to its roots a little bit, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's what has people pretty
Mhm.
excited about it, to see something fresh and new like that. How far off do you think running like standard, modern, Pioneer, or how far off do you think that is with your store?
I would hope within the next like 6 months, I really like to kind of focus on growing the community first because there's still a lot of people that don't even know we exist. So definitely trying to bring more people in. My goal for this year is honestly to do a lot more marketing on other platforms beside Discord because our main social media right now is Discord. We actually have a Discord server with over 500 members. It's really awesome. I love Discord. Our other social media though is kind of like it's floating, but it's not quite there. But we're on all the social media. We have a Facebook, we have an X, we have a Blue Sky, we have Instagram, all of that.
So what types of things with getting involved in other social media platforms were you looking to utilize them for? Was it more so for marketing events? Was it
Mhm.
as a way to engage with community members that may not be inside your inner circle on Discord of the store, trying to reach people in the New Jersey area? I was curious what
Mhm.
your long term, I guess, outlook is on those marketing plans.
All of the above, what you just said. Main thing is back at Family Fun Hobbies, Pokemon Day was huge. It was one of our biggest days, and it's not the same at Round Two, and we're kind of like, that's weird. Why? So my plan is I actually want to reach out to like local mom groups on Facebook and be like, hey, bring your kids to Pokemon Sunday. We'll teach them how to play.
That I think is a really smart idea, especially considering one of the things I've heard from other stores is they do a lot of those type learn to play things
Yeah,
with young kids, and it brings them in, and it gives them a place to bring their kids, like when to keep them from
absolutely.
going too crazy in the house and stuff like that. But yeah, no,
Yep.
I think that would be a very good idea to try out. What are some of the we obviously touched on there a little bit of the things you're looking towards the future. What are some things you feel you guys are doing that are working well for you right now?
One of our best ideas that we came up with, and this was kind of a group idea between Ray and I, um, we were looking at our average sale number and we saw that our average sale was sitting at around $40. And we're like, well, how can we bump that up a little bit? And we had this Gashapon machine. If you're familiar with Gashapon, it's like the Japanese capsule machines. Um, and we had it just as like a fun sales promotion sort of thing. But I was like, what if we got a second one and we kind of incorporated that as part of our sale process? So now we have this thing at Round Two Gaming, and it's basically like if you spend $50 in the store, you get to roll the Gashapon machine. And in each capsule in the Gashapon machine, there's a die ranging from D6s all the way up to one D20 in each machine. Whatever die you get, you roll it, and whatever number you roll, you get that many dollars off your purchase. People love it. People have been talking about it constantly. People will spend $50 just so that they can play the Gashapon machine. And people are sitting around like $47. I'm like, hey, if you get one more pack, you'll hit $50, and then you can play the Gashapon for a discount.
That's a brilliant strategy. I mean, normally
Yeah,
you would see something like that, say like on a Black Friday or something like that, but you're doing
no,
this all the
all the
time.
time, all the time. And it
That's
works really, really well for us. It's been great.
That's great to hear. Now, from the flip side of that, what is a difficulty that you've been facing? It doesn't have to be anything, huge or traumatic. It could be something
Mhm.
small, but what's something you're looking to correct, or something that just maybe hasn't been working?
So, unfortunately, the thing that I've been struggling with the most isn't really something we can do anything about for the time being. But because we're in the mall, we have to follow the mall's hours. And the mall closes at 9 o'clock on most nights. I think currently during the Christmas season, they've been staying open until 10 on the weekends, which has been great for us. But since we hold our events in the evening, most people don't get off work until like 5, and then they get to the mall around 6. So a mall closes at 9. That's only 3 hours to play. It's, it would be a lot better if we could make our own hours, because I would love to close at like 10 or even 11 some nights. Unfortunately, there's really not much we can do about that, but we're actually in talks with the mall to see if there's something that we can arrange. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I'd love to stay open a little bit later.
Do you think with that, restriction in place, like where you're kind of tied to the mall's rules, has that had the owner come to you and like in terms of like looking towards the future at a point of having like your own standalone store, like maybe in a mini mall, but not like inside of a mall where you're bound to those hours?
I mean, I think ultimately that's the goal that we'd like to get to, but we're not rushing toward it. Right now, we're kind of just focusing on where we are and what we can do where we are. Building up the community, getting people into our store, playing games at our store, and purchasing things from us. That's the important part. We'll work with what we've got for now. The mall has been great otherwise. One of the perks of being in the mall is the food court. People trust us to leave their things at our store, and then they'll go get something to eat and they'll come back. So that's really cool. We don't really have to stock too much in the way of drinks or snacks anymore like we did at Family Fun Hobbies, because people can just grab something from the food court.
Was Family Fun Hobbies, was that a standalone store when it was
Yes.
open?
Well,
Okay.
it was like in a strip mall, but yeah, it was basically, we were able to set our own hours there. So it's different, but
Of course, yeah. So with that in mind, is there like a cost difference to being in the mall? I would imagine, is it maybe a little cheaper being in the mall than opposed to like rent
yeah.
wise?
Yeah, I was honestly I think all of us were surprised by that, but I guess it does kind of make sense. There's a lot of talk that mall culture in the United States is dying. People don't really go to malls that much anymore. So when we were looking for a location for Round 2 Gaming, we were originally looking at standalone stores or like strip malls, and they were all like ridiculously expensive. Then we decided to check out the mall, and surprisingly, it was like one of the cheapest places in the area. So we're like, what do we have to lose? Let's try it.
I mean, you've been doing this for a while now between the two stores. What would you say has been like the most rewarding experience for you being in the position you're in that you maybe didn't anticipate, since you had mentioned earlier that, obviously you didn't get into retail because you mentioned it wasn't like a dream of yours or anything like that. It just, you climbed the ladder into it. But what's been the rewarding aspect for you that's kept you doing it all this time?
Definitely. Okay, so it's a tie between two events. One of them is probably more poignant to Round 2 Gaming. It was the day that we opened Round 2 Gaming. We opened the gate at the mall, and there were like 10 people already waiting for us on opening day. We had a whole community of people from Family Fun Hobbies come over to Round 2 Gaming. Because they all knew about us and our story. There was a whole thing. There was a point at Family Fun where we started a Kickstarter to try and save the store, and we raised over $15,000. Of course, it ended up not being enough, but it was able to buy us time that we needed to find and meet Ray and plan what we were going to do for Round 2. So seeing that all come to fruition, and especially over the course of 3 months, Round 2 Gaming became a reality, from conception to reality in 3 months, which is insane to me. Like, we worked so hard to make it happen, and it did, which was incredibly satisfying to see. But there was another story. This was technically back at Family Fun Hobbies, but it's why I love what I do. We got a letter in the mail from a kid who, for a school project, he was supposed to write a letter to a business. And he wrote to us, and he was talking about how he loved Pokemon and he was going to be the greatest Pokemon trainer. And he wanted to come to our store to learn how to play Pokemon and buy Pokemon cards from us. And it was just very cute. I actually wrote him back, and I mailed it. And I think the mom saw it, and she made a post on Facebook about how her son got a response to the letter he wrote, and no one else did, because I guess other kids wrote to like larger companies who don't make time for that kind of stuff. So being a small business, being able to be an active member of my community, and reach out to our constituents, or not constituents, but like our customers, that's what makes it fun for me. I like being able to see firsthand the results of our work and our passions.
And what would you say, when you think about that joy that it brings you, just, to reach out to a little kid that, is doing something for a school project, but, it still makes you feel good in the same token, climbing through the ladder of the retail industry. Would you say that, it's quite amazing, like, to hear how much you enjoy it, and knowing from other people I've talked to that do the GM position, how much is involved with doing it that people might not understand. How do you balance the enjoyment of it and knowing that there's a lot of work involved with it? Like, how do you keep yourself like even keeled with it all?
How do I keep myself sane?
I guess so. Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, I don't. That's the secret. That's my secret, Cap. I'm not sane. I mean, that's kind of the payoff. That's the trade-off, isn't it? Like, I know going into this, it's like, I'm never going to get rich doing this. If you open a game store and your plan is to make a lot of money, I have some bad news for you, dude. Like, we don't do it for the money. We do it because we're passionate about it. We do it because we care about it, and because it's something that we love doing. That's pretty much it. Of course, there's days where you're going to be ripping your hair out and frustrated over stupid little things. Like, Games Workshop drives me insane with their whole packing policy. And like, every time I have to check in an order from Games Workshop, I'm just like, okay, I would rather be dead right now, but it's fine. But it's okay, because people like Games Workshop and they like Warhammer. So I put on my big girl pants. I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm girl bossing.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid-free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com.
If we take a step back from away from a game store, usually you'll climb the ladder to get to that type of position. Did you do anything like early on before being a general manager that, you ended up learning these skills over time to learn, how to order, how to get the right products that you need, how to manage a team? Like, if you could take us back a little bit to like your start and then how you went up that ladder.
So, I mean, like I said, I started as just like an associate. I took the job because I had graduated college. It was a pretty low point in my life. I had been looking for, the real job for like 6 months, wasn't finding anything. Eventually had to settle. I was waitressing at Texas Roadhouse and working at Family Fun Hobbies. So I was doing 2 jobs back to back, like 12-hour days every day. It was exhausting. Eventually, though, it got to a point where I ended up getting comfortable enough at Family Fun Hobbies that I decided to quit waitressing, kind of moved more toward full-time at Family Fun. That's when my boss at the time, Rob, who was the owner of Family Fun, he offered me a position as the assistant manager. So jumped on that. I got, small raise, more hours, more responsibilities, started learning more things about, writing the schedule, checking in orders, managing inventory, that kind of thing. And when the general manager at the time was let go, I took over his job, and then I was the general manager, and I did that for about a year at Family Fun before Family Fun closed down. So once we opened Round 2 Gaming, I kind of just reprised that role. It's been most of the same, but it has been a little bit of a learning curve because Ray definitely does things much differently than Rob. So it's been fun, actually, kind of like figuring out different ways to do things.
What has been the biggest learning curve that you've had to train yourself to learn?
Biggest learning curve is honestly using a new point of sale. So we used Lightspeed at Family Fun Hobbies, and we're technically still using Lightspeed now at Round 2, but it's a completely different version of Lightspeed. And Ray is also a lot more stringent about keeping our inventory correct. Like, Rob was very blasé about it. He would just be like, "Oh, if it's wrong, just manually fix it." Ray's like, "Don't do that. We need to audit this and figure out where this product went and why the numbers aren't matching up." So it's a little bit of digging and researching, and but it turns out that apparently that's how you're supposed to run a business. But yeah, it's been fun. I'm really enjoying learning more about Lightspeed and also inventory management, that kind of stuff.
I'm glad to hear that. You had mentioned earlier about, how quick the concept for Round 2 gaming came into play, how that all formed. The name, which I think is a very clever name, was there any back and forth with what name you were going to come up with, or did that come off just instantly?
So technically it was originally Round 2 Games. What Round 2 was the initial thought. When I was first kind of brainstorming what we wanted to do, I had actually wanted it to be a gaming cafe. So Round 2 Gaming had multiple reasons or symbolism, I guess. The main thing was that it's our Round 2. It's our second chance. Also, at the time when I was thinking of a gaming cafe, I was thinking, games and coffee, two things. And then also the fact that oftentimes in a best of 3 match, Round 2 is the crucial round that can often decide the game. So we originally wanted to be Round 2 Games. I think actually our official name, on our legal documents, is technically Round 2 Games. But when we went to buy the domain, someone had already taken it. This was within 24 hours. We had looked it up the night before. We're like, okay, good. Well, we'll settle this tomorrow. And when we went back on the next day, it was gone. Someone had taken it. And we're like, well, crap. Now what do we do? So we had to pivot really quick. And we're like, okay, well, I guess we could call it Round 2 Gaming. Some people were like, oh, well, some people might confuse that for gambling. And does it really make that much of a difference? So
I like that you had the multiple meanings too for it. You had a reason for each different concept, whether it was Round 2 in a match, like you mentioned. I like that it can mean multiple different things depending upon how you look at it. But I really like the whole aspect of that. It's Round 2 for the original store to what you're doing now. I think that's clever.
Thank you.
So from a marketing standpoint, one of the things I was thinking about in terms of, I know you want to do more with social media. Has there been any conventions or events that you guys have thought about vending at to get the name out about the store?
Yes. So we're planning on doing more conventions this coming year. I did go to PAX Unplugged this year. I was there on Friday, but it was really more just for fun on my part. We didn't have a business card at that point. So I was I always love going to PAX as a game store employee because I like scoping out new and upcoming games. But I think in the future, going to conventions and stuff is going to be much more of a intentional networking opportunity.
I know Gamma is one of the big conventions for, whether it's game store owners and retail or, the manufacturers of those games. I don't know much about PAX. I've heard very much about it, but I didn't know what it all entailed. Is it kind of along that same line of new games being shown to the public before they're officially in market?
It's a little bit of both. So I think a lot of the newer games that are coming out, people are finding through Kickstarter. And part of the problem with Kickstarter, I mean, it's not a problem. Kickstarter is great, but we have a lot of customers why don't you guys carry Kickstarters? And the reason for that is because if people really want a Kickstarter, they'll just back it themselves. As a store, if we try and back a Kickstarter, by the time it finally comes in, most people already have it. So I really would like to see conventions that feature new games that aren't necessarily already kickstarted. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. This way it makes it easier for you to acquire it rather than having to wait for the whole production process.
Mm-hmm. On the same token, though, I understand why so many, especially small indie game studios, will start with Kickstarter, because how else are you supposed to fund it? You need funds for the project, and that's the whole point of Kickstarter. But the frustrating thing to me is when larger game companies will start on Kickstarter. I'm like, you guys already have a following, you have a backing. Why are you doing this on Kickstarter?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting thought too. Yeah, I'm not sure why they would be using that if they have the backing, but When you
Yeah.
think of all the games that are available out there, and when you're ordering them from your standpoint, and
Mhm.
then what is your process for determining pricing? Are you using just, I know the industry standard when it comes to cards is
Mhm.
TCG Player. How do you do those things that are, say, not card games, like for instance, board
Mhm.
games? What is the like industry standard for determining pricing, or what methods do you guys use yourself?
So at Round 2 Gaming, we use MSRP for board games, just flat out.
Okay, so there's not really, this way you don't have to think too much about it.
It's not even really about thinking too much. It's just that we want to make sure that games are as affordable and accessible as they can be to people. So like we don't really ever want to upcharge. There's always a point where we could charge a 50% markup on it and make more money, but then this is why small local game stores are constantly fighting with Amazon and big box stores like your Targets and your Walmarts, because Target and Walmart can afford to charge lower prices. MSRP is really kind of like the lowest that we can go unless we're offering like a special sale or something. But even MSRP for board games is usually sitting at around 40 to 45%.
Okay. And it's funny you brought up MSRP because the last game store I talked to, I asked him about, does MSRP from now Wizards of the Coast bringing that back, is that a positive from a store standpoint? For his answer, he said it wasn't without MAP. I'm curious if you feel the same way about that, or if things from your store, like since you like MSRP for board games and that works. I'm
Yeah.
curious if it works in the same manner for you for Wizards.
It does not. So MSRP is totally different for board games versus trading card games. And the reason is because, like we were talking about earlier, trading card games, depending on the card, have wildly fluctuating value, right? So I agree with the last person you talked to that an MAP is crucial. They need to institute a minimum advertised price, because otherwise it's just going to become a race to the bottom.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was told as well. And it makes a lot of sense when
Mhm.
you think about it in that context. Is there anything that, because I know Magic the Gathering with their decisions that Wizards of the Coast makes, in many cases it frustrates the consumer. And then so I always like to get the game store perspective on this, because I know you guys, are ordering a lot of product. It's stuff is always coming in. You're selling a lot. In terms of the product ordering, I recently heard that for this upcoming year, for 2025, they're actually going to be decreasing some of the product, output that they've been doing as of late. Is that a good thing for you guys as the stores? Does it? I'm sure it maybe alleviates that, how much you have to buy, considering, the more products you have to buy to stock, the more money you're spending. So I'm curious from the store standpoint, how you look at the amount of product Wizards release compared to the way the consumer sees it.
I mean, that's a very loaded question because it's talking about supply and demand. Um, on one hand, sure, it's great if we don't need to, buy as much product, but at the same time, we need to meet the demands of the customers. So if we have customers coming in saying that they want to buy something and we don't have it, then we lose that sale.
More so from the standpoint of, do you wish that, the amount of spending on the product that you have to make, if they're releasing all these products because of supply and demand, you'd have to order them. I'm curious if the less number of SKUs is a
Mhm.
beneficial thing from an inventory management standpoint, which it would seem like it would on paper, but I don't know if it's that, black and white.
So yes and no. There's pros and cons to it. On one hand, yeah, of course, it's easier for me because it's less things that I have to put in the system. On the other hand, though, part of the thing that makes people interested in Magic the Gathering, I think, is the variety of content that they have. Although, on the other hand, some people get fatigued by it. But I kind of like having lots of different sets of Magic the Gathering because it kind of gives me a little bit more leeway to recommend a set to someone who's new to Magic. You have like these wildly different sets like Bloomburrow, which is like cute, fuzzy woodland animals, and then you have Duskmorn, which is like gothic horror and like almost like 80s horror movie vibes. um, so I kind of like that they're taking different directions, but maybe I guess a few less sets in a year would probably be good to decrease consumer fatigue because people who are diehard Magic the Gathering fans don't really have the money to be spending like on buying a box of every set that comes out. It's a lot.
And what about like some of the other games? Like if we take Pokemon or you talk Dungeons and Dragons, Yu-Gi-Oh, any one of those games, do they have the same output that Magic does, or would you say Magic it has the most output in terms of products?
I definitely think that Magic does a lot more than most of these other games. I would like to see more from Dungeons and Dragons, to be honest, but I kind of understand why we don't. Magic and Pokemon, I feel like, are kind of both up there with like the consistent set release schedule. But I'm kind of I guess overall it's good to see Magic kind of pulling back a little bit, because I think I would rather see quality over quantity.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I do miss. I know it's probably never going to go back to it, but I do miss the old 4 standard sets and maybe the 1 specialty product. It was a
Yeah,
lot easier to maintain from at least the
yeah,
consumer.
it's true, and I feel like maybe doing that too would kind of incentivize people to like focus more on the set that recently came out. If you have like one set a season, right? That makes
Hmm.
sense, because then people can get used to those cards, and whatever mechanics are introduced in that set um, become familiarized with that, and then when the new set comes out, then we can move on.
Do you have the chance to play games, say maybe the way that you used to with running the store? I mean, how much free time? Because I know from some of the owners I've talked to, their free time is very limited. From the GM standpoint, is it as limited as the owner, or do you have the time to still play like you used to?
I definitely don't have quite the same amount of time as I used to, but I feel like it's not even it's less being a general manager and more just being an adult. Like, I have so many responsibilities now as an adult that I didn't have when I was 14. It was, being a kid was fun. I miss being a kid. It was less responsibilities. I always did my homework when I was still at school. I used my study hall to do all my homework. I would leave school. I would go to Family Fun Hobbies. I'd sit there and I'd play Magic the Gathering with my friends for like 3 hours, and then I would go home and play World of Warcraft. And that was my life.
I remember when World of Warcraft was all the rage,
Yeah.
going way back. Yeah, that was quite something. I never played myself, but what was it about it? Do you think that had that craze about it that people like were just glued to continue playing it?
I think part of it was like herd mentality. So many people were playing it, and it was a fun way to cultivate a virtual community. I actually made friends on World of Warcraft that I still talk to today. So, I mean, I feel like it's not like that anymore. So many people have kind of left World of Warcraft at this point that, like, the last time I logged onto my account, the server was just like dead. There was like maybe like, I don't know, 200 people online as
Oh
opposed to like
wow.
thousands of people before.
That's
But
crazy. Like to think
yeah,
that period of time going by, something that was once big. And it's kind of like crazy to me just how Magic has stood the test of time,
yeah.
compared to all these other games, just from when it started to where it is now. Do you think that there's another game like that you see from the store standpoint that could have the lasting legs that Magic has?
Mm, Currently, no. I feel like Magic and Pokemon seem to have that, like, something about them that lasting cultural zeitgeist that has just like enthralled generations of people. um, there's definitely games that are really popular right now, like Star Wars Unlimited has been doing really well for us, but I don't know if it's going to be as big as it is now in 3 years. Magic and Pokemon, I feel like, are never going to go away.
Yeah, I agree. I wonder though, with Star Wars Unlimited, because I do you think in terms of because I don't know anything about that game to really speak on it, but from what you see on your end, is the Star Wars Unlimited game, do you see any like parallels to maybe Lorcana? Because I remember Lorcana was so hard to get early
Mhm.
on, and there was a
Yeah.
big like demand around it. Is Star Wars
And then,
Unlimited, and then it drifted. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like it's the Star Wars Unlimited has kind of become the new Lorcana, where like Lorcana came in blazing hot and then just slowly started to fizzle out.
Yeah, I had a feeling that could possibly be, its
Yeah.
trajectory. It seems like the reason that these games, especially the card games, are popping up at such a rapid clip now, I had always speculated, just in my own thought, that maybe it was because of how many products Magic was releasing, and people were getting overwhelmed with it, with having to spend all that, and then it kind of opened the door. Even from Magic's decisions, maybe had opened the door to some of these other games. Was that from a store standpoint something that you kind of expected, or was it more so, are you guys used to just new games popping up all the time?
We're pretty used to new games popping up all the time. And I mean, that's part of the fun of having a game store, is like, constantly going with the flow, trying new things. When we originally created our event schedule at Round 2 Gaming, we actually had 2 days a week that we called Flex Days. And the idea of that was that the Flex Day would be something different every week, where we could kind of introduce a new game to the community and, gain feedback from the community on what they want to see. It would also be a good opportunity to bring in game creators to run demos of their games. So the flex days, I feel like we have actually, at this point, we've limited it to like 1 day a week. We kind of do it now on Mondays in conjunction with Commander. But it's a really good way to, see what people are feeling about games right now. And a lot of people on our Discord too will recommend, like, hey, have you guys heard of this game? Because I've started playing it and I really like it. I'd like to see it at the store. So that's really cool. So as far as game creators go, we've actually had a couple game creators. One of them came to our store and one is interested in coming. Doug Lewandowski, who is one of the co-creators of Kids on Bikes, the RPG system, has actually come in a couple times to run events for us, which is really awesome. Kids on Bikes is super fun, kind of like an 80s style, like similar to D&D, but it's really its own thing. It's hard to explain. I feel like more simplified than D&D, but it's entertaining. You're playing as a kid. You don't have any like superpowers or anything. You're not magical. It's just you're a kid dealing with weird things happening in your town.
That's cool.
And then I recently spoke with one of the creators of the game Varia. His first name is Anthony. That's terrible. I can't remember his last name. I have it in my email. But he is interested also in coming into the store to run a demo and maybe even stock the game at our store. So that's really cool.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash CityCon, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best. In addition to role-playing games, board games, there are vendors and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com.
When it comes to those flex days for the games, to see if something is going to work and to fit into the regular rotation schedule, what is like the telltale sign to determine, okay, we don't have to use this as on a flex basis anymore. We can actually bring this in as, like Magic, for example.
Mm-hmm. I would say, honestly, when at least half the tables are being filled by people playing the same game, that's our first indicator that, like, hey, we should be paying attention to this.
So it's like you said, you have the 8 tables. So if 4 of them are being filled, then it's got legs.
Yeah, it's got legs.
When you had mentioned earlier that the entry fees for the games, like you guys don't charge entry fees, is that correct?
So with the exception of like a draft or a tournament where we would offer out prize support, yes. All our events are free. I think the only other exception to that is for our D&D nights, we'd have multiple things going on D&D night. We have one-shots. So our one-shots are free. You basically just come in. If there's an open seat, you sit down and you play. But we also do have a couple tables who are running ongoing campaigns. And that we do charge for. It's $20 a month for the campaign, or if you spend $40 in the store, we just roll that in. But the reason being is that we use that money to compensate our volunteer DMs with store credit.
Oh, that's great. That's good to hear. Yeah, I don't know much about D&D. I'm mostly a Magic player and I collect Pokemon. So from a D&D standpoint, because I've always heard the DM role is obviously the most important role within the game.
Yeah.
How much is involved from a dungeon master's standpoint to run that game? Like just for somebody like myself that's not familiar with the game.
So the dungeon master or the game master is essentially in charge of creating the story and also playing all of the parts of the non-controllable players in the story, and any enemies as well. So when you're the dungeon master, you are creating a world for the players who are playing your story, and you're also rolling the dice for the monsters that they're fighting. That's kind of the point of being a DM. I've often told people that the DM can make or break a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, because I've played with really great DMs and I've played with really crappy DMs.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so they pretty much control whether or not the game is going to be good.
Yeah. I mean, well, I don't know if I would go that far, but in a way, yes. I definitely think it's a huge part of it. Like some DMs just go all out. Like they'll do like different voices for different characters that they're playing as. Sometimes they'll have like music set up, so it's like you get like theme songs or theme music.
Very cool.
It's fun. It's fun to see DMs really kind of get into the campaign that they're running for the players.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. So my final question for you is, if you can give everyone listening a kind of like a virtual tour, as best as you can describe the store, somebody walking in for the first time like myself, how do you have the store laid out?
So it's a long store. It goes all the way back. So you're gonna walk in. The windows in the front are glass, and we have like displays in the windows. On one side we've got like a Space Marine, and then on the other side we have like board games and big chess pieces. So then when you walk in, it's a blue carpet. We have 2 like tiered displays with different games. Eventually, what we're going to do is we're going to have them be seasonal and like new releases, maybe staff picks, that kind of thing. And then all along the walls are lined with shelves. So we have board games and party games up front. And then going a little bit further back, you have our Warhammer and also our D&D selection. On the left side of the store is going to be all of our tables lined up where players can sit and play. During the day, they can play whatever they'd like. In the evening, we have the scheduled events. But we also have a wall of demo games. People can literally just grab a demo game off the wall and sit down and play. And we're also working on a rental agreement too, because we'd like people to be able to, once we have like a contract for it, people can rent these games for, it's 10% of the retail cost per day that they have the game. And that way it's a good way to try before you buy. Our counter is all the way in the back. So once you get to the back of the store, that's where our register is set up. And we also have glass showcases with TCG cards. It's like the ones in the glass showcase are value cards. So that's anything $5 and up. And then we also have a tablet where you can look through our entire collection of singles and also place an order, and we'll pull it for you and pick it up right there. All the TCG is behind the counter. So
that's fantastic. Well, Miranda, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Before we close up here, is there anywhere you'd like to point people to go to check out or to learn more about the store?
Yes, so check out round2gaming.com. We have a whole link tree, so it's all of our social media, including a link to our Discord server. Please join our Discord server, because that's where you're going to find us.
Yes, I'll definitely be sure to add that link in the video and in the description of this episode. Miranda, thank you again for taking the time. This was fun.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.